President Biden removes restrictions on social networking apps TikTok and WeChat. The Commerce Department will now review the Chinese-made software, examining claims that the apps pose national security risks. The U.S. Senate passes a bipartisan bill to help the country compete with Chinese technology. New York's transportation authorities say hackers breached their system in April. They suspect the attackers have ties to Beijing. And neon lights on Hong Kong's iconic mountaintop commemorate a pro-democracy protest. The spectacle marks the second anniversary of the city's anti-extradition movement. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Joe Biden is removing restrictions on social networking apps TikTok and WeChat. At the same time, the Commerce Department will perform an evidence-based review on the Chinese-made software, with a focus on protecting Americans' personal health information.
The White House is withdrawing restrictions on some Chinese apps. The blocks were first proposed by the previous administration. Trump-era executive orders attempted to ban video-sharing app TikTok and messaging platform WeChat, citing national security concerns. President Biden signed a new executive order on Wednesday, dropping the bans on new downloads of the apps. He's now ordering the Commerce Department to conduct an evidence-based review of apps supplied or controlled by China. On top of user data protection, the department will also give recommendations on how to protect Americans' personal health information and will address the risks of other apps connected with foreign adversaries. That's according to senior administration officials from the department. A court filing said the Commerce Department was looking into claims that TikTok poses national security threats and whether they're justifiable. An update will be released later this week. Former President Trump targeted TikTok last summer with several executive orders. Those documents accuse the app of collecting data on users. The attempted ban was blocked temporarily by court order. TikTok has since appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals, hoping for a review of the Trump-era order and the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment's investigation. The process is ongoing. TikTok is the most popular Chinese video sharing app. The social networking platform also boasts nearly 100 million monthly active users in the U.S. and nearly 700 million worldwide.
The U.S. Senate passed a bipartisan bill to boost the country's tech industry. It aims to help the U.S. compete with Chinese technology. NTD's Jessica Beatty has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 68.
The Senate passed a bill Tuesday to boost American technology so the U.S. can better compete with China.
This bill.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says as a percentage of GDP, the U.S. spends less than half as much as the Chinese Communist Party on basic research.
They believe that democracy itself is a relic of the past, and that by beating us to emerging technologies, they will be able to reshape the world in their own image. Well, let me tell you something. I believe they are wrong.
The bill is passed.
The bill passed 68-32. It shows that taking a hard line with China is one of the few issues with bipartisan support. Republican Senator Roger Wicker says it's a game changer for U.S. research efforts.
This is an opportunity for the United States to strike a blow on behalf of answering the unfair competition that we are seeing from communist China.
About $190 billion would go to strengthening U.S. technology and research, and another $54 billion would go to increasing production and research into semiconductors and telecom equipment. The Commerce Secretary said the funding could result in 7 to 10 new U.S. semiconductor plants. The House still has to pass the bill before President Biden can sign it into law. And the U.S. is launching a new task force to fix supply chain problems in certain industries.
We are launching a new supply chain disruptions task force to tackle near-term bottlenecks in the semiconductor, home building and construction, transportation, and agriculture and food industries.
The task force aims to boost domestic production in 4 areas: pharmaceutical, semiconductor, electric car batteries, and critical minerals. It seeks to control shortages of vital goods and cut reliance on competitors like China.
We also have to push back against unfair trade practices by competitor nations that have hollowed out the U.S. industrial base and undermine our supply chain security.
The Secretaries of Commerce, Agriculture, and Transportation will lead the new task force. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Another major part of the tech bill focuses on increasing the U.S.-Taiwan partnership. It will further increase trade and diplomatic exchanges between the two sides. The bill recognizes the legitimacy of the Taiwanese government. It reads, "The U.S. government shall engage with the democratically elected government of Taiwan as a legitimate representative of the people of Taiwan." The bill also seeks to ban TikTok from U.S. government devices and will ban government agencies from buying drones from Chinese companies linked to the CCP. On Tuesday, Biden released a statement saying that he applauds the passing of the bill. And the next day, a CCP committee said they are opposed to the bill. They accused the bill of being an attempt to contain China's development. A new government report is out, in line with Biden's 100-day supply chain review order. It includes findings from the Defense Department, among other agencies. The review assesses risk to America's access to critical products, like those used in pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. It finds the U.S. excessively dependent on imports from China, especially rare earth minerals used in electronics and the aerospace industry. Rare earth minerals are also used in enhancing metal properties, something critical for manufacturing and agriculture. China currently dominates the world's rare earth supply chain. This directly affects the flow of key materials around the world. As a result, many rare earth producers in the U.S. are shutting down because they can no longer compete with China. Some of them even moved their business there. The report also warns of China's unfair trade practices, like restricting exports to gain trade leverage over the U.S. Beijing's aggressive tactics could potentially expose the U.S. to supply chain vulnerabilities, a hidden hazard to national and economic security. The report points out that China has shown a willingness to restrict access to resources, with reductions in its exports of rare earth elements over the past 10 years. In addition, the report finds that China took over large portions of supply chains and several critical materials using state-led non-market interventions. And even if the U.S. was to diversify its import sources, it would still be reliant on China for processing before use in end product manufacturing. The report advises the U.S. to work with allies and partners to diversify supply chains away from China. On Tuesday, the White House also called on Congress to authorize at least $50 billion in investment funding for domestic manufacturing and research on key materials. New York's transportation authorities say hackers with suspected ties to Beijing breached their system in April. According to the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, the hackers intruded on 3 of the MTA's 18 computer systems. The MTA moves millions of commuters daily, but luckily they didn't find any signs of damage. The hackers also did not get into systems that operate train cars. The MTA says investigations found no employee or customer information breached, no data loss, and no changes to our vital systems. The New York Times first reported on the breach last week. It took place on 2 separate days around mid-April. The MTA did not find out about it until a week later. The New York Times says the hackers gained access by taking advantage of flaws in a software tool that MTA uses. The software is called Pulse Connect Secure. Other U.S. sectors also use this software. And the MTA hack is one of numerous recent cyber attacks involving Pulse Connect Secure. Hackers have already targeted parts of the U.S. defense industry that use the software. American private cybersecurity firm FireEye worked with the federal government to help identify the MTA hack. FireEye suspects that the hackers are working for Beijing. The firm says this is based on similarities they found between the recent hack and previous hacks linked to China. Similarities include their tactics, tools, and targets. The company that owns Pulse Connect Secure has released an update to fix the vulnerability. The MTA has since implemented the update and ordered nearly 4,000 of its workers to change their passwords as a safety measure. Neon lights on Hong Kong's iconic mountaintop commemorate the 2nd anniversary of the city's anti-extradition movement. Hong Kongers began mass protests on June 9, 2019, against Beijing's proposal to amend the extradition law. Critics said it would allow Beijing to suppress any dissident in Hong Kong and send them to mainland China for unfair trials. The movement lasted for almost a year, with over 1 million Hong Kongers protesting persistently. This Wednesday, on its second anniversary, Hong Kongers outlined the words "Faith and Free Hong Kong" with LED lights on top of Lion Rock Mountain. They also waved flags with slogans of the movement. The neon words are even visible from the most popular local temple some 2 miles away. Participants told the Epoch Times they hope to encourage Hong Kongers to hold on to their faith and eventually be free. The anti-extradition protest on June 9, 2019 was at the time Hong Kong's biggest protest since Beijing took control in 1997, and it marked the beginning of a series of protests. Hong Kongers later held demonstrations demanding more freedom and democracy, but the Chinese regime violently cracked down on the protests.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
The southern Chinese city of Guangzhou began multiple rounds of virus testing on Wednesday. Authorities explained that a move targets residents living in key areas of the city. A recent wave of the CCP virus, or Chinese Communist Party virus, has plagued Guangdong province for over 2 weeks. It also spread to other nearby cities. Confirmed cases there are still rising. The province has reported nearly 130 cases as of Tuesday, but asymptomatic patients aren't included in that number and will be counted separately. We cannot verify these figures independently due to the Chinese regime's tight control over what information is released and its history of underreporting virus cases. Some residents who had close contact with confirmed patients have been sent to the hotels for quarantine, while others are now locked up at home. One resident told Chinese magazine Caixin that if a person stays at a hotel for quarantine, they can simply leave after 2 weeks. But for those locked up at home, it's unclear how long it will take before they are allowed to go out, as new confirmed cases emerge in the neighborhood daily. Local media outlets report that 6 members of one family tested positive over the weekend. This discovery in particular has prompted concerns, as locals fear the virus had been circulating undetected in the community for quite a while before being discovered. Virology professor Jing Dongyang from the University of Hong Kong all but confirmed those worries. As of now, the Guangzhou outbreak's patient 0 is still unknown. He says this indicates the virus spread began long before people started taking notice. As of Monday, all farmers markets in mid and high-risk regions of the city closed down. People in the area now must scan their health QR codes before entering restaurants, hospitals, and other public places. The QR codes are part of China's contact tracing system. They alert users and authorities when a person comes in close contact with an infected patient. In another nearby city, Shenzhen, commuters will be required to scan their codes before entering the subway, starting Wednesday. Shenzhen has been dubbed the world's factory due to the large presence of global manufacturing companies there. Amid the rise in virus cases in Guangzhou, Chinese authorities are using big data to locate those potentially exposed to the virus. A family member of someone potentially exposed to the virus is currently quarantining in a hotel in the city. To protect his identity, we give him a pseudonym, Tang Ming. Tang tells the Epoch Times he was under quarantine only because his family member went to a restaurant for takeout, and later authorities found that a person tested positive for the virus was at the same restaurant at the same time. Tang says whoever was present around the same time and within a diameter of a mile are all to be located and taken to mandatory quarantine. But how were the authorities able to find those people? Through data collected on people's cell phones. Tang seems to take it for granted.
Cell phones send signals to stations which are managed by operators. The government just approaches these operators and gets the data.
He says if a person carries a cell phone, authorities can find out whoever was present in a certain location at a certain time. Tang explains phone calls rushed in the day after the restaurant found out about the virus case.
Calls from neighborhood authorities and pandemic control offices poured in. My first reaction was, these spam calls are quite something. They look so real. There were so many phone calls.
Tang says the pandemic situation in Guangzhou is very terrifying. There are already positive cases in every district, and they've even spread to other nearby cities. Local officials reported 31 new cases in Guangdong province on Tuesday, and the province has around 2,500 cases overall. Because the CCP has a history of covering up virus cases, NTD cannot independently verify the numbers. A bird flu outbreak is wreaking havoc on wild birds at a Chinese nature reserve. The country's agriculture ministry confirmed on Wednesday that H5N8 bird flu, formerly avian influenza, had been found in Shaanxi province. The outbreak struck the Hongjianao Nature Reserve, killing more than 4,000 birds there. The bird flu virus is considered to be highly pathogenic, meaning it's likely to kill birds sickened by it. The term doesn't explain how infectious it may be to other birds, animals, or humans. This is China's 6th bird flu outbreak this year. The Agriculture Ministry added that all the 6 outbreaks have been isolated incidents, and the virus hasn't spread from region to region. A new study is challenging the CCP's claim that it eradicated poverty in China. Former UN economist Bill Bacalus says in his new research that China has not eradicated poverty, even extreme poverty. According to Bacalus, China will not be able to do it either until it identifies all poor people and what it means to be poor. He says until poverty is seen as both a rural and an urban phenomenon, until special attention is paid to the still large number of floating population, the rural-urban migrants, and until the country provides a safety net for all its people. This includes those who are hit by a death, serious illness, loss of work, or other shock. As of now, Beijing still considers poverty to be a purely rural phenomenon, and 60% of China's population live in urban areas. Back in April, the CCP released a white paper on poverty alleviation, saying it has eliminated extreme poverty for the first time in Chinese history. And the Communist Party is boasting it ahead of its 100th anniversary in July. It claims that China won a comprehensive victory against poverty. Despite the claims, China's poverty line is only $2.30 a day. It is just above the World Bank's global extreme poverty line, which is $1.90 a day. The number, however, is way less than the poverty line in upper middle-income nations, which is $5.50 a day. An independent tribunal in London heard testimonies from Uyghur Muslims alleging torture, forced sterilization, and rape. Researchers estimate at least 1 million Uyghurs have been confined in re-education camps in Xinjiang. Here's NTD's Jane Wirrell with the story.
An independent tribunal that's examining allegations of human rights abuses against Uyghurs in Xinjiang has begun its first set of hearings. The tribunal aims to assess if Beijing is committing genocide. Witnesses gave testimonies of torture, forced sterilisation and rape. It's chaired by the prominent human rights barrister Sir Geoffrey Nice QC, who has previously led the prosecution of Slobodan Milosevic.
We will not be affected by what may simply be present turns of mind. We will only make decisions on the evidence.
The panel of 8 is made up of lawyers, academics and a former British diplomat. On the tribunal's opening day, the first witness, speaking through an interpreter, described being forcibly sterilised in a Chinese state hospital and sexually assaulted by a Chinese minder sent to her home.
I am a woman myself, I have a daughter. I don't wish anyone to suffer like that.
The tribunal doesn't have the backing of the UK government and doesn't have powers to sanction China, but the panel hopes that the evidence will help governments assess their relations with Beijing. Beijing says the tribunal was set up by anti-China forces to spread lies. The tribunal has continued to invite the Chinese embassy to give any evidence, but they haven't come forward. This is the first set of hearings of the Uyghur tribunal. The second set is coming in September, and the final ruling is set to be made by the end of the year. Jane Wirrell, NTD News, London.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, we have a new special report coming up this Friday. For years, China's organ transplant industry has been matching patients with organs at speeds unimaginable in the West. In some cases, finding 4 hearts in 10 days or 2 livers in just 24 hours.
So how are they able to have this quote-unquote on-demand transplant system that's capable of extremely short times? The only way they can be doing this is if they have another source of living donors that are available on demand.
They become anonymous prisoners of conscience, and that makes them extremely vulnerable because they can disappear at any time without a trace.
This isn't just a totally China-contained crime. There's complicity in what China is doing throughout the world.
Our medical community could become accomplices to this horrible, terrific tragedy.
In this special report, we lift the veil on the mysteries surrounding China's organ transplant industry and look into what's happening behind the curtain. Be sure to check out the special report on Epoch TV. China in Focus is partnering with a platform, and that's where you can watch our exclusive content every Friday night. In them, we'll explore questions like how China lures in foreign companies to steal their technology, how the Chinese regime is actively collecting health data on people around the world, how the ancient Chinese philosophy of good governance differs from the current-day communist regime, and much more. Be sure to check out these investigative episodes by clicking on the link in the description down below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you really want to understand what's happening with China. You can still watch our Monday to Thursday episodes for free on YouTube, NTD Cable TV, the NTD website, and the Epoch TV website. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.